To know what the village had in terms of assets and so on, that when they occupied, that people would not, run away with what the Zionists wanted for themselves.
Zionists were keen to increase the number of Jews coming to Palestine. But following the St. James Conference in 1939, the British imposed limitations on Jewish immigration. This change in British policy was met with opposition. In 1940, a French-built ocean liner, Patria, was at Haifa harbor carrying 1,800 Jewish refugees who had earlier arrived from Nazi-occupied Europe. The British were deporting them to Mauritius. To prevent this, the Haganah group planted a bomb on board to disable the ship. A large hole was blown into the side of the ship, and some 260 people on board died when the boat sank. Details of this operation were disclosed 17 years later by the Haganah member who had planted the bomb. The British were struggling to contain the situation in Palestine. Meanwhile, in New York in May 1942, an important meeting took place at the Biltmore Hotel. Some 600 prominent American delegates and Zionist leaders attended. The meeting was prompted by the realization that America, not Britain, would henceforth play a part in the fulfillment of Zionist designs. Attendees included David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, and Chaim Weizmann, president of the Zionist organization.
في ذلك المؤتمر المنظمة الصهيونية اتخذت قراراً بنقل الثقل من بريطانيا إلى أمريكا. طبعاً كان ممهد لذلك علاقات قوية بين الصهيونيين في أمريكا وبين الحزبين الديمقراطي والجمهوري، وحتى الآن العلاقة قوية. لكن تطورت العلاقة. خروج أمريكا من الحرب العالمية الثانية سيدة العالم الغربي، ونزول بريطانيا إلى إمبراطورية سابقة حيث كانت الشمس لا تغيب عنها وأصبحت تغيب عنها تماما، وبالأساس تغيب عن لندن الشمس. ذلك شجع اليهود على أن يعتمدوا على أمريكا من خلال استمالة الزعامات والقيادات الأمريكية من الحزبين عن طريق رأس المال والدعاية الصهيونية في أمريكا.
The Biltmore Declaration outlined support for what it called the establishment of a Jewish Commonwealth in all of Palestine. It condemned Britain's limits on Jewish immigration. Other Americans raised concerns about the Zionist program. In 1943, General Patrick Hurley, a former Secretary of War, submitted a report to President Roosevelt following a visit to Palestine and a meeting with Ben-Gurion in Jerusalem. In the report, Hurley was highly skeptical of the Zionist agenda. He summarized its expansionist aims. The Zionist organization in Palestine has indicated its commitment to an enlarged program for 1. A sovereign Jewish state which would embrace Palestine and probably eventually Transjordan. 2. The eventual transfer of the Arab population from Palestine to Iraq. 3. Jewish leadership for the entire Middle East in the fields of economic development and control. Zionist supporters in America were undeterred. In 1944, the World Jewish Conference met in Atlantic City, in the state of New Jersey. The speeches left little doubt about their drive to see the establishment of a Jewish Commonwealth in Palestine.
The Jewish Commonwealth inherits Israel, operates Israel, means nothing more than justice to the Jew, freedom for the Jew, equality of the Jewish people with all the free peoples of earth.
That the real solution of the Jewish problem cannot be brought about unless the Jewish people will be given the right and will be helped by the United Nations to establish Palestine once and for all as its own Jewish commonwealth. This conference appeals to the United Nations to ensure that the general scheme of post-war reconstruction shall include the establishment of Palestine as a free and democratic Jewish commonwealth.
In 1945, following the end of World War II, US President Harry Truman appeared to encourage the Zionist agenda by recommending the 100,000 displaced Jews in Europe be allowed to emigrate to Palestine.
Always hoping that we'll finally arrive at the peace in the world which we anticipated when we created the United Nations. That's the only reason.
Back in Palestine, Britain was maintaining its new policy of limiting Jewish immigration. As a result, the different Jewish paramilitaries decided to begin coordinating attacks against the British military. The main Jewish force, the Haganah, agreed to work with the Irgun and Stern Gang. The Jewish resistance movement was formed. David Ben-Gurion persuaded members of the Jewish community in America to fund the purchase of arms manufacturing machinery so that the Haganah could produce its own weapons.
والله إنهم بالجبال منشورين وبتدربوا نضحك عليهم كل شو حركة بدينهم وشو بيسووا هذول ليش هذول بيعملوا هيك يدبوا حالهم على الشوك والله على الشوك يدبوا حالهم ويتدربوا نضحك عليهم.
Meanwhile, Palestinian politician Musa al-Alami went on a tour of the Arab world. In Arab capitals, he discovered complacency towards the situation in Palestine. The general view being that the Arabs vastly outnumbered the Jews and could control the Jewish minority. For their part, the British realized how volatile the situation had become in Palestine. They began to evacuate British families. Discussions went on between the Zionist movement and the British authorities. Documents reveal that Chaim Weizmann held secret conversations in March and July of 1946 with the British High Commissioner Alan Cunningham. In these talks, they discussed the partition of Palestine and how the parts of a viable Israeli state should be linked up, giving it control of both the Negev desert and the waters of Galilee. On the ground in Palestine, the British Army continued to confiscate arms from both sides. In the first half of 1946, over 300 Palestinians were arrested for the possession of weapons. At this time, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini, was in France. He had spent the war years in Italy and Germany, hoping the Axis countries would win World War II and that their victory would herald independence for Palestine.
Der Großmufti von Jerusalem besichtigt musulmanische Truppen der deutschen Wehrmacht.
يعني حاج أمين كان يخاف إنه إذا بتصير في هون مؤسسات ويكون في هون قيادي جديد يمكن يعني ما يكون عنده تأثير زي ما كان وما يكون على منصب القيادي.
مفتي القدس الحقيقة الحاج أمين يعني نحن بنحسن النية فيه، لكن كان في قناعتي أنا الشخصية دون مستوى القيادة. لكن تنسيش البيئة العامة في البلد. الرجل كان مفتي فلسطين العام ورئيس المجلس الإسلامي الشغلات، مش أنا اللي عينته، اللي عينه الإنجليزي يعني كمان.
In May 1946, the Mufti went to Egypt to participate in a summit meeting of Arab leaders. The newly formed Arab League's first item of agenda was to coordinate a response to the situation in Palestine. A follow-up meeting of Arab foreign ministers was held in Bludan, Syria. Present as an observer was the director of British military intelligence in the Middle East, Brigadier Iltid Clayton. Meanwhile, back in Palestine, the British Army was now the target of an increasing number of attacks from Jewish paramilitary groups.
Against British restrictions, extremists wreck a train on the outskirts of Jerusalem. Armed crewmen inspect the hole where the explosion which caused the wreck occurred, and guards patrol the area. The continued unrest...
Violence and death ride the ancient streets of Jerusalem. And here the climax, blasting of police headquarters. 3 men lost their lives in this attack. A roving band shot up the station first, then launched high explosives. soldiers combed the debris for